So I get this question a lot too when somebody's interested in our services to train their team. They want to know, like, what sales methodology am I using? There's a lot of quote unquote popular ones out there. There's Medic, there's Challenger, there's Consultative Selling, things of that nature. And it really stumps me a lot of times because I don't use any of those. So if I had to put a name to it, it would be called objective-based selling. And the thing is, this is, I use the same sales process today that I did, over 25 years ago, and it works at the highest level. Obviously, if it was something better out there, I would use it. But all the ones that I've seen and I've read about, I mean, in my opinion, you could pick up any book that you have out there right now. It's a Challenger, the Medic. There's a number of them out there, right? And then read it, and then I'll say to a sales rep, okay, which one of those books could you pick up right now, finish reading, and then put the book down, pick up the phone, and know exactly what to say to your prospect to get the conversation going. What would you say after that? What would you say after that? What would you say after that? And then they go, none of them. They can read it. Yeah, it sounds great. It's very popular, but nothing helps you pick up the phone to know exactly what to say. Mm-hmm. Where objective-based selling methodology is completely different. What it does is, what I did is I taken it from the ultimate goal, which was getting a prospect to purchase and use and love your solution, right? Which means, okay, for that to happen, what do you have to do before that? Well, that means you have to close a qualified prospect, meaning qualified. They have to be qualified to use and benefit from what you have to offer, right? Okay, so what happens before that? And you just work it all the way backwards, step by step by step by step. And you get to the very beginning. Once you have a lead that pre-qualifies to be a suspect, right? They have the basic necessities, the right industry, location, annual revenue size, employee size, right? Those basics that are out there, if they pre-qualify to be a suspect, okay, you got to pick up the phone to get the conversation started to see if an opportunity exists. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to know what the objective is of what to say after hello, my name is. There's a lot of times, like I'll do these webinars when we'll get thousands of people into them, and with all different walks of life, all different years of selling. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to ask a very basic question. And I'm not trying to trick them. So I'll lay it out very specifically. You're making a first-time call to a new lead that's pre-qualified to be a suspect. They match the basic necessities for you to go, hey, there's a chance they could be a qualified lead. Let's contact them, right? Okay, what's your objective when you pick up the phone to contact them? And almost everybody gets it wrong every time I ask. And they say things like, well, to set an appointment or to build rapport or to close them. None of those are correct, right? And then this is why so many people are struggling, because they have all these different ideas of what's supposed to be done. If you ask that question to your sales team, let's say you got 5 sales reps on your team, and you as a manager or a small business owner or whatever, you ask that simple question, and you have 5 reps, you get 4 different answers. That's a problem, right? How do you scale if everybody thinks the solution is something different? I mean, can you imagine a McDonald's being run if everybody thought once the order comes in, they all had 4 different ideas of what to do next? It'd be chaos, right? So the sales process, the objective-based selling methodology, there really is a step-by-step process that just makes sense. So for example, when you're making a first-time outbound call, your objective should be to see if the prospect is indeed qualified. You want to see if there's qualified there to see if an opportunity exists. Well, now here's where I get a lot of people go, well, I already know they're qualified. Oh, really? How do you know that? Well, they have the right title, they're in the right industry. I'm like, okay, so your definition of qualification and mine are totally different, because in the objective-based selling qualification process, for a prospect to be qualified, they need 3 things. And the very first thing they need is they have to have a problem you can help them solve. And you don't know that they have a problem until you have a conversation with them. You suspect they might. They match the criteria of other people that your company and organization has helped, right? It's not just enough for you to know they have a problem. They need to know it as well. And if they knew they had a problem and wanted solved, it would be an inbound lead, not an outbound cold lead, right? So, and you can't call and tell them that they have a problem, because a lot of times they'll doubt it, or they'll say, yeah, but that's the way we've always done things. And so that's why you can't just call it and present your solution. You have to get them to recognize a problem first. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can't do that until you get them willing to have a conversation. And how do you get them to have a conversation? Well, you have to use the right opening value statement, which is step 1. Well, what's the right opening value statement? Well, you have to pique their interest, not using the stupid stuff we're reading on LinkedIn and all these articles that are coming out saying, I mean, how many of you guys get an email where they're buttering you up first? I got 3 of them today. Oh, I saw your article on this and blah, blah, blah. I was really impressed. And then they try to do the hard sell pitch or whatever. No, that's not an opening. You want to have an opening value statement that's going to pique their interest based on an area you need them thinking about, right? Agitate a pain, scratch an itch, just enough to get them willing to hear what you have to say next, willing to have a conversation with you. So when you do that, you use that opener to pique their interest. Yep, I'm interested. I have a few seconds. Go ahead. Now what do you do? Like, so if I drill it down even further, to give you guys an example, my objective on a first time call, I know I have to see if they're qualified. In order to qualify, they need three things. There has to be a problem I can help solve, and they're going to have to recognize it's a problem. They're going to have to agree it's a problem, and they're going to have to say to me, yeah, they want that solved, whether they recognize the problem before I called or not. So problem recognition is a third of qualifying. The next thing is I got to make sure that they have the authority to solve that problem, or at least be part of the authority to solve that problem, should they decide they want it done, meaning their decision-making role. And again, I can't say, well, I know that they're a decision maker because they have the right title, because any salesperson that says that to me, I can easily say back to them, let me ask you a question. You ever have a deal, you're speaking to somebody with the right title, they can make the decision, and then another company, same industry, everything, person with that same title, you go for a close, and they have to check with 5 other people first, right? That's going to happen, yes? Okay. So you can't say automatically they're the decision maker without speaking to them. You can suspect, which is fine, but you won't know until you get a conversation. You ask the right questions at the right time. Now, with objective-based selling, I'm going over, all over the place here a little bit. But let me ask you this: would you want to identify their role in the decision-making process as having authority before you get problem recognition? How are you going to do that? How is somebody going to honestly answer that question before they recognize why they should even tell you that? Well, they'll recognize that they should tell you that once they agree there's a problem and they suspect you might be able to help them solve it. Now there's a what's in it for them. So now they're going to be more willing to answer the question like on their authority role. Does that make sense? It's all objective-based selling. I start with objective 1. I got to pique their interest, right? On that call, what to say after hello, my name is, I'm not trying to close them, set an appointment, build rapport. Rapport should happen naturally as I go through this. It's not a step in the process. So my objective is I have to pique interest and then gain permission to continue the call. Once I do that, I pique their interest within the first few seconds, and then I go, and if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to see if what we have to offer maybe some help to. Would that be okay? If I've piqued their interest, they say yes to that. And it works for me 90% of the time. Over a 25-year period, in all different industries, it works. You just have to know how to customize it. Now I'm in the qualifying phase, and the objective is I got to get problem recognition out. There's a very specific way to ask certain questions to get problem recognition. And guess what? If you get problem recognition, you have a green light. You now move to the next phase of qualifying, which is identifying their role or their authority in the decision-making process. Once that's done, the next step is to qualify their role on can they afford your solution should they decide they want it. This is where so many salespeople go wrong, because every sales manager I've ever had, maybe except for one who was really smart, always said never bring up price until after the presentation, which is really bad advice. We've all gotten this advice. And the theory that is, well, don't bring up price until after the presentation because you want to build up so much value that when you give them the price that they just go, wow, there's so much value there. Yeah, let's sign up. That's what we are sold as sales reps, but it never works that way in the real world. Besides, if you're giving a presentation, they don't know the price. Half the time that you're giving a presentation, what do you think they're wondering about? How much is it? Can I afford this, right? So you're losing their attention. I call it data corruption. You're trying to give them information for them to make an educated decision, yet half the time they're wondering if they can even afford this or they're not fully engaged or listening. Yet if I follow the objective-based selling method, where I know step 1, I got to pique their interest enough to get permission to continue the call. And if I get that green light, I go to the next phase and I have very specific questions I asked for that in order to achieve problem recognition. And guess what? And I can do it within 30 to 45 seconds. So from the time my opening to getting problem recognition could be no more than a minute and a half if you get really good at it. And then if I got problem recognition, guess what? That's another green light. I'm following the path, objective-based selling. So once I got problem recognition, now the next step is got to pepper in a couple of quick questions regarding their role in the decision-making process. I get a green light on that. They're a decision maker, they're part of the decision-making team, or they have the ear of the person or persons that can influence it. I'm good. I move forward to the next one, right? And I just keep following that path. And that's why it works in every industry, because even though every salesperson, VP of sales, sales director, business development director, small business owner that listens to what we're saying here, yes, they have unique solutions to unique problems that their clients have. That's what's unique. What is not unique is how people buy. It all starts with problem recognition. If there's no problem to solve, there's no need for a solution. We all sell solutions. So we got to get problem recognition first. You can get somebody to agree that it's a problem. They want it solved. But if they're the end user and they have no power, They don't influence the decision. They are the decision maker, but they have no money. They're not qualified, right? So that's why you have to go through these processes. Well, so here's the problem I have with BANT, right? Because BANT, for anybody that does not know, it stands for budget, authority, need, and time, right? And those are things that need to be uncovered. But I don't know if it's because maybe I have a mild case of, ADHD or whatever. I need, or compulsive disorder. I need things in order. And if I look at the word BANT, you don't start the sales conversation identifying their budget or their authority or their need or their time frame, right? You start with piquing their interest and getting them willing to allow you to ask them a couple of questions real quick. And once they do that, and you only get them to agree to have a conversation with you if you pique their interest enough. Let me give you an example. I call a sales director. Everything matches. They're in the right location. They're in the right industry, right employee size, right annual revenue size, and they have the right title I can start the conversation with. And I call and say, hi, this is Michael Pedone with salesbuzz.com. I provide online sales training. I'd like to ask you a few questions, see if I can help you real quick. Would that be okay? I'm going to hear no. No, thanks. Not sure. We're all set. We already have something that does that. We already do something like that, right? If I do that same call and I go, this is Michael Pedone with salesbuzz.com. And the reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. And if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to see if we have an offer. Maybe it's an interest to you. Would that be okay? Now, even if they have an internal sales training solution or an outsourced sales training solution, chances are their sales reps are still struggling with call reluctance. They're still not wanting to pick up the phone, even if they have a solution. So therefore, I'm agitating the pain, scratching the itch. And guess what? Now they're going, it's really hard for them to say no. I mean, what sales team does not have sales reps that are afraid to pick up the phone unless they've gone through my course? Right now, that same scenario. Now, if somebody goes, well, I don't sell sales training. It works in every industry, whether you're marketing, financial services, IT, computer software. And I've sold in a lot of these. I know it works. So you just customize for that, but the process is the same. Back to that BANT thing. So I like things in order. So I got to pique interest first, gain permission. And then the first step is I got to get problem recognition. I have a very specific formula that I teach in my course that shows them how to easily do that, customize it. So everything just works and flows as a natural conversation. But so my first thing would be problem recognition. And then I got to identify their role. And here's the thing, though. Let's say it's not just about knowing the process. It's knowing how to get from one step to the next, but it's also what to do if the step you get on next doesn't turn green for you to move on to the next one. How many times have we all seen a sales rep just have a script? They just read it. They're asking questions. They're not even listening to the answer. And the answer that they might get back might be a red X, and they just keep going on. So when the sales rep takes the Sales Buzz course and the team takes the Sales Buzz course and they learn, okay, this is why we're doing something. This is why I have to pique interest and I can use my own opening value statement. And this is why I have to do next. And I have to listen to the answer to see if I have a green light. And guess what? It's one of three things. Every time you go to get the next step, you're either going to get a green light, yellow light, or red light. If it's a green light, you move forward. If it's yellow light, you got to stop, you got to clarify, and then that clarification either turns it green or red. Or if you get a red light, you'll have another opportunity to maybe go a different direction. But if it's still red, then you still did your job. Your job is not to close every lead you call. Your job is to close as many qualified prospects as fast as possible. If you're following the objective-based selling, if you ever run into a red light, it means they're not qualified. Or, for example, when you get to the authority part that you're talking about with BANT, when you get to identify their decision-making role, if they're not the decision maker or part of the decision-making team, but they're what I would call an influencer, which means they have the ear of the decision maker, but they do not have a vote, you have to change gears a little bit to get them to contact you. So you have to run a different play. So it's like baseball or like football, rather. Like you have a certain play at days. It's third down. We got 3 yards to go. And, this is how much time's on the clock and here's where we're at. We have to run this play. And it can't be, well, can I speak to your boss, for example? Because then they just say no. They get defensive. So you have to run a play that gets them to go, yeah, let me get them involved for you. And I have a solution for that. But anyway, this is all objective-based selling. And you're trying to get from one step to the next and take it as far as you can. One of the things with the challenger sales, just going off of some of the synopses and things and that, and I have read it, right? But the synopsis and everything talks about using a methodology, that approach that aims to teach the prospect and tailor the sales process to their needs and take control of the sale. That's so wide. Everybody knows that. But on the same side of it, though, I'm not trying to aim to teach the prospect about something yet. I have to get problem recognition first. My whole salespeople should be solution people, I think. probably be better if we were called that, because if you approach it from that, you want to solve things. Now, there's also a methodology out there called, solution selling. Okay, the problem is that before, and it talks about, building relationships and things of that nature. You have to recognize a problem before you get to the solution. So if you just try to approach it, or consultative based selling, you're approaching it for consultative, you've got to get problem recognition first, and you can't even get problem recognition if you don't get them to be willing to have a conversation with you. And that's why opening value statements are so important. So I think that if you break it down and you say, step one is to qualify them. How are you going to qualify them? You have to get a conversation going. Okay. What is going to make them willing to have a conversation with you so you can qualify them? This riddle is simple. It goes all the way back to Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which the whole basis of it is people care about themselves, right? So you have to agitate a pain or scratch an itch. There has to be some hint of what's in it for them, a problem that they must be having, and you have to agitate that pain. And in order just to pique their interest, it's a spark. Right? You just want to spark it enough to get the flame growing. So the problem that I have I was just on a call before this, and somebody was saying that they were taught to use this one opener and it's not working for them. And I said, yeah, it's not working. And I explained the reason why. But what they said is they would call and say, hi, so-and-so, this is XYZ from, and they would mention their company, and they go, how are you today? Right? Or they would just say, how you been? And then they're trying to falsely get them into, like a rapport building conversation. Now, I personally say, how are you? But I don't use it as a way, because I go, hey, so this is Michael from salesperson.com. How are you? I say it more because I'm Italian and from New York, and it's more like it's not expecting an answer back. And that's my tone, because I'm not trying to get them to falsely have a friendly conversation. I don't want them thinking, hey, this guy sounds familiar. Like, am I supposed to know him? Because then their mind is not 100% focused where I'm used. So I don't want that strategy. Another strategy they said they use is, hey, this is a cold call. Do you have 27 seconds to hear why I'm calling? I think this is a horrible opener. Now, a lot of people say, well, it works. And I'm like, well, define works. They don't hang up on me. Okay, they don't hang up on you, but how far into the call do you get after that? Because the problem with that is you just asked permission to do a data dump. So if they say yes to that, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. Yeah, 27 seconds. Go ahead. They chuckle, whatever. And now what you do is you do a data dump on why you're calling. You're not in control of that sale. And then if you try to take control after you do your data dump, there's going to be some resistance there, because now you're going past that 27 seconds. So with that being said, that's why I feel my type of opener works better, because it gets me to the point where they go, yeah, I got a second. Go ahead. They have an idea of what the call's about. I got them thinking an area I want them to think about. Now I know I have to get them problem recognition. I have a very specific way I'm going to do that, that I teach, to get them to easily have that done, to get and customize it. And guess what? Based on their answers from that, it determines, yep, there's a problem there. They now recognize there's a problem. Guess what? They're also interested in hearing a solution to that. And so I could say a filler where it's like, I think I might have a solution for that. Before I get to that, let me ask you this. So I tease that out there a little bit. It's like a little bit of a carrot, and then I bring it back, a little bit of a carrot, bring it back. And all along, we're just walking down the path. And before you know it, my pipeline is filled with deals that are a high close rate. And it's all because of following an objective-based sales process. And that's why if I had to name it something, the sales buzz method, if you will, if I had to give it, a methodology name, it would just be objective-based selling. So those are two separate issues, right? So a cadence is what you're doing to get them on the phone. It's once you get them on the phone, what do you do next? And I don't care if you use LinkedIn, you send them a tweet, you send them an email, I don't care how you get the conversation started, but at the end of the day, you got to have a conversation. And when I say, a conversation, it could be through phone, it could be through a Google Meet or Zoom or whatever. It's all the same thing. You got to have you have to have a sales conversation. The best way is when you already have a customer that has bought from you and now they need more stuff. That's the hottest lead you're ever going to get. They've already been through the process. They need more. That's going to be the easiest and hottest sale you ever have. The second easiest sale you're ever going to get is when one of your best customers knows somebody that they said to your best customer, I need a solution for this. They go, hey, we had that same problem. I know exactly who you should call to. Call Michael at salesbuzz.com. And now you have that as an inbound lead, right? There's two types of referrals. That is the second hottest lead you'll ever get when it's a referral that way. The other referrals are actually twice as hard as cold calls, because you have to cold call your clients, right? Because they didn't raise their hand. They weren't expecting you. You have to cold call your client, say, hey, who else do you know? Squeeze them for names. And then you have to pick up the phone and call the people who are not expecting your call and say, hey, I'm calling you because so-and-so, right? So it's like double the work. Here's the other problem with that. Just because your best client gave you names, your best client was qualified, that doesn't mean that they know that the names that they gave you were qualified or that they're having those problems right now, right? So with that being said, so when people say, well, I do off referrals, when you can't scale with referrals, it's really hard to do it that way because you, especially the hot referrals, because that's the inbound referral rather than the outbound, right? So again, the three best ways, in my opinion, is you're going to have a client that's buying from you, a client that's referring somebody that needs your solution. Obviously, then an inbound lead would be the third one. You can't control if that inbound lead is qualified. You hope it is. But if you get an inbound lead, they fill out a form, you still have to pick up the phone for the first time to contact them. It's the same process as cold calling as that. It's just, hey, they raised their hand. The problem is a lot of times salespeople, they get these warm leads. They don't know the objective-based selling method. They are able to skip a bunch of steps, just get to the solution. They might ask a few, pre-qualifying questions or, about the situation, but then they get to the solution, they fill their pipeline, and the deal's closed naturally because they were looking for a solution. But what ends up happening is something disrupts the inbound chain, something breaks or things shift. And now that low-hanging fruit's no longer coming in. And this is usually where I get phone calls or people reaching out to finding my website and reach out because all of a sudden their sales team, there's not that inbound stuff and they had to start doing some outbound. And these sales reps who were crushing it when they were inbound leads, all of a sudden, they're not doing too well. See, you can skip steps and get away with it on an inbound lead. It'll cost you money. You won't close as many as you should, but you still close a fair amount because they were hot to begin with. Can't do that with cold calls. When you're making those outbound calls, you have to be sharp. Every step of the way, you have to button it down. And when you learn the objective-based selling, that's why any sales organization that's out there, when you're a brand new sales rep, it's very rare that you get the hottest leads that are coming in right out of the gate. A lot of times you have to prove yourself on making some cold calls, because if you can pick up the phone and generate business that way, it's proven that you're knowing the process and that you can be trusted when the hotbound leads come in. And that's why when I first got into sales and I saw there was always the same top 5 people that out of 100 reps, they were always in the top 5. They just switched positions every month. They're always jockeying, but they've proven themselves so much on the cold calls that they were on the rotation list for the inbounds as well. Now, they didn't just live off that, but it was the difference maker for them, right? Because they've proven themselves. And, inbound leads are expensive because marketing spent money to generate that. Cold calls, hey, there's a phone book. Most people reading this won't know what this, or listening to this won't know what that is, but hey, back in the day, there's a phone book and a phone, get on it. Or there were leads that were hot at one time that are now not in the database, and that's what you have to pick up the phone and try to resurrect. Or you just have to do straight up prospecting. And if you're going to do that, you have to know what each step is, and you'll be more comfortable and you'll be more successful in my opinion, if you follow the objective-based selling method. The majority of sales reps are going to work for a company that already have some data history. They're not a brand new startup. And if there is, there's a different way to do that, right? But for the most part, if you're starting at a company, they have some history, meaning people have bought from them before in the past. They have an idea of what a good client looks like, and they have an idea what a bad client looks like. And when you run the numbers on it, from basic numbers, you take a list of all your clients that you wish you had more of, and then you run it through simple demographics. You get to see a basic formula of who your best target looks like: industry, location, company size, annual revenue, just the basics. And then what were the top 2 or 3 titles of the people that you dealt with at each one of those? You'll start to see, like, I forget what it's called, but you have that half circle here, the half circle here, and then a circle here. And then in the middle where the 3 overlap, I forget the term of it, but you'll see like the most common titles that are almost always involved. And so you start there, but you don't assume that they are the decision maker, because, like I said, the person with a VP title at one company, or let's take owner. Yeah, I'm an owner. Okay, well, the owner at one place doesn't have a partner, doesn't need to check with anybody else. He can pull the trigger. And an owner at another place might have a partner that anything over a certain amount, they have an agreement on that they have to get both signed off on, right? So you just never know, but at least you know where you can start, but you don't assume. But that's why it's okay to know and where to start. And you use the right opener, get permission. You got to pique their interest, get permission. Once I got that, okay, go to the next objective, which is I got to get problem recognition. Well, how am I going to do that? I can't tell them they have a problem because they're going to doubt it. So I'm going to have to be able to ask them questions that, based on their answers, they can recognize and see it's a problem. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, it's got to start with what I call an engagement question. And your engagement question puts them in an area that you want them in, you need them thinking about, and you give them a scenario, and based on their answer, right? And the great thing about the engagement question is I'm not trying to trap them. I'm not trying to manipulate them to get them to answer a specific way. That's the other problem too. A lot of times people think, well, it's a script, you're trying to get them to respond a certain way. I'm not. I'm going to give them an engagement question, and based on their answer, right? When I do the right engagement question, there's only 3 ways they can respond. Because when I'm going to give them an engagement question, they're going to say it's an either or question. Actually, there's 4 ways to answer. The first, it's the second, it's a combination of those 2, or it's none of those, it's this. And if it's none of those, it's this. If this is something that I can work with, I'm in like Flynn, and now I go to the next question within the problem recognition series of questions I have. And so everything just works that way. I see 25 years. It's actually longer than that. I'm just trying to like hide my age a little bit, but it's really been over 30 years I've been doing it this way. And so personally, I built and sold one company for 7 figures, started it from scratch. And now I've got Sales Buzz, which I've been doing forever and a day, and it's been working there. And then prior to that, I was working for other people. And when I learned how to do it my way, and I broke it down this way, it was working there. There's just too much evidence that it works. Plus we have like what, 5,000 clients around the world that are using this, over the last 10 years. So, we know it works if you have sales reps that are willing to learn. So that's the biggest thing with sales reps. If they're not coachable, don't even waste your money. And what I would say that if you have sales reps that are not coachable and they're producing for you, though, just leave them alone. But if they're not coachable and they're not producing, that means they're costing you money. It's time to cut the cord, in my opinion. Right? Otherwise, why would you keep them? You need trainable sales. Everybody should always have sales reps. They could be skeptical at first because I don't know what it is in our industry. A lot of us have like big egos. We think we're the best. With that being said, though, I'm always wanting to learn. I'm always willing to listen to somebody who's already achieved or exceeded the level of success that I am after. And if somebody says, well, what have you succeeded? Why should I listen to you? I've been a straight commission sales rep forever and a day. And now you could do that and live in a trailer park, right? But with that being said, because of my sales skills, I was able to start one company in the middle of the .com bomb and grew it to be very successful and sold it for a 7-figure deal. And then took some time off and then started Sales Buzz when the housing bubble crisis was happening. It was still successful, and here we are still today. I don't have any bailouts. There's no guaranteed salary. I wake up every day like a lion. Right? You're always that lion or gazelle, right? You know that story? Every day in Africa, a lion and a gazelle wake up, right? And they both know that the lion knows that he's going to have to outrun the slowest gazelle or he's going to starve to death. And the gazelle wakes up every day in Africa and knows he's going to have to be able to outrun the fastest lion or he's going to get eaten. I live by what I preach and I teach. And I know a lot of sales reps say have a salary plus commission and there's more of a work-life balance. And I'm totally fine with that. That's fine. But if you're going to do it, you might as well be the most successful you can while the hours you're putting into it. A lot of times they could just learn 2 or 3 things out of the plethora of things that my course teaches, and it makes a huge impact for the rest of their sales career.